Hello everyone. For the next page in my index card book, I'm going to use two different envelopes, two different sizes of envelopes. One of the envelopes will look like this, be this size, and I'm going to make this envelope using this envelope punch board. And this base is about the same size as the file folder we used for the last card in this book. It's 4.5 inches long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to seal this envelope up and then slit it on one side so that it can be a pocket in this direction. And then this just has the dimensions of my envelope. And then I'm going to use one of these die cut envelopes. I've shown you a couple of examples of these, like this one. I'm going to use a die cut envelope that I'm going to attach to this, and I'm going to hinge it. I'm going to hinge it so that it can flip open so that you can see something underneath. So it gives you an opportunity for one pocket here, one pocket here, and then also the opportunity to have something hidden underneath. And so that this stays closed when we're flipping the pages of the index card book, I'm going to use a magnet inside of this envelope and inside of this envelope, just tiny little magnets that will hold two pages together until you want to open it. So that's an overview of what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to start by making this envelope. And I already have a piece cut for the window envelope. So this will basically look like a window envelope when it's attached together. So it's going to be this blue. I'm going to use mica. Mica is a very thin rock. I use this a lot. I use it for my little slide frames when I do little slide frames like this. And what you see here is several layers of mica. So we're going to pry this mica apart and just use a thin layer of it. And that will look like cellophane on top of an envelope. It'll look a little bit more organic than cellophane, but it'll provide a really nice little old window. And I have this page pulled out, which is a little book page on the same bird, the red-breasted nuthatch. And I'm going to use this to make something interesting to go underneath my envelope so that there's a reveal. So the first step is just to make an envelope using this envelope punch board. And I think in my first video I said that I didn't think I would be using these because this is the smallest envelope I can get, and I usually use envelopes this size. But after I thought about it a little, I thought this would make a really nice page. And having it sealed up gives you a pocket, just like you would if you used an envelope like this that's ripped open and you've got a little pocket on the side. And this is another option if you have old envelopes. That's another way to go. So for this punch board, all you need to do is to know the size of the envelope that you want to make. And it's hard to read, so I've written it on top of this sample envelope. To make an envelope that's 4.5 by 2 3/4, I need a piece of paper that's 6 by 6, like this piece of, this is Tim Holtz backdrop paper. And then the first score line is going to be at 2 3/8. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to go to 2 3/8, which is this line right here. And then I'm going to punch it and I'm going to score it. And then I'm going to turn so that this score line lines up with this guide. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to punch and score. And then turn, line up the score line, and then punch and score. and then turn for the last punch. Line up the score line, punch. And score. And that gives you your score lines and notched edges for your envelope. One last thing that I'm going to do, if I turn my punch board to the side, there's a little corner rounder here, and you can just tuck this in here and punch, and you'll get a rounded corner. We'll just make it look a little bit more envelope-like. That's it. So this is an alternative to dies. So this little envelope was made with these Tim Holtz dies, but if you have an envelope punch board, all you need is your paper. And it's something to think about in terms of where you're going to invest your money, whether it's in a punch board or a die set. I'll also mention that to make this window, I used this larger die that I set inside of the envelope die to cut the window. So you have 3 different sizes for windows for this postal die set. Oh, and just to show you the mica tiles that I mentioned, this very thin rock that we're going to use. I bought this on Amazon. It used to be available directly from ArtQuest. They have a website, but the last time I checked, they did not have a supply at ArtQuest, and they only had it at Amazon, so I bought it at Amazon. So this is going to be used to cover the window. Okay, so now we have all our pieces. So I'm planning to layer these pieces onto this piece. So I think, let me finish off this envelope first, and then we'll put the other envelope together. So I'm just going to fold this up and do a little bit of ink on the edges. So I have this all inked, and then I'm going to glue it together. I'm just going to put my mat aside. I'm going to wait to close this up until I decide where my magnets are going to go. I mentioned that I was going to use 2 small magnets to hold my envelope that's going to flip open onto, when I hinge it, I want it to be able to, the magnet to pull it closed. So I have 2 magnets, one for this envelope and one for this envelope. So I'm going to wait to close this last side until I decide exactly where that magnet is going to go. So I'm going to set that aside and work on this piece for the moment. It might look like this is even from first glance, but when you go to flip the side up, you'll notice that one side provides a nice even closed piece and the other side doesn't. So it just looks a little more awkward that way. So you want to think about that if you're using these die cuts and make sure that you have it going the right side. A little detail that I'm going to add, I think, since this guy is going to be inside, just to give you an idea how it's going to look. This guy's going to be inside. and this is going to be open, and I want to use something. I'm gonna do a hole here. Maybe just that is all I need. I was thinking about using one of these labels just to make it a little more interesting. So this is just one of these labels that I've added some watercolor to, the same wash that I use for all of my pieces, and then inked it. The first step is I'm going to cut a piece of mica for the window, because that's something I need to do while it's open. So I'm going to take my mica. If I use this size, you don't have to have it go all the way across. So I could use this smaller piece, glue it on these two edges, and then leave sort of a ripped edge at the top. Or I can use a piece like this and cover the whole thing. It just depends on which sort of look you want to go for. And just to show you, I hope this peels away easily. Sometimes it peels away perfectly and you get 3, 4, 5 layers, and other times it just splits. So it's a little risky. So let's just see. I'm going to pull this apart. It's just layers of rock. Isn't that cool? If you don't have this and you can't get it, or you don't think you'll use it, then just use plastic. Use some kind of packaging. Or you can just leave it uncovered. You don't have to cover it up. So don't feel like you have to use it, but it's an ingredient that I really like. Whenever I'm making a slide frame like this, I just find that it looks so cool if I add this over the top of it, so that it, you know, it gives it that sort of old, aged look of like what old cellophane might look like if it were on a window envelope. So that's a nice piece. You can see that this piece is transparent, more transparent than this. Just to show you, I'm going to see if I can get another layer out of here. I could probably get about 5 layers if I tried. But sometimes I'll keep peeling and peeling, and then I'll realize that the last layer just splits everything and I'm not able to use either of the pieces. But this is peeling off very nicely. So you can see 2 pieces. I think this might split again. And then we'll have our choice of which one to use. Yes. So this is at least 4 pieces. I might be able to get more, but I'm not gonna take the time to do it. So this one and this one I might be able to split again. I'm just gonna set those aside and use one of these two. They're about the same. About the same. So I'm gonna leave that one and set this aside. And I think since I can use this piece for a slide frame, I'm going to just use a larger piece to cover this. So I'm just going to cut a piece to size. It doesn't need to be regular. It doesn't need to be even on all sides. You just need enough of an edge so that you can glue it down. So here I've got an edge on all 4 sides. I'm just going to cut this little bit off here so that it all fits in the window area. I'm addicted to mica. I just really love it. I don't know if you can really see how beautiful it is on the video, but in real life it makes a good thing that simulates old plastic while being an organic material. And I just think that's so cool, especially for something like a nature-themed journal. Okay, so I'm just checking it out to see how much glue I'm gonna need. There. You just want to make sure that your glue is a thin enough layer so that it doesn't come bulging out in the middle. Okay, so that looks good. And you want to make sure that there's no overlap. You don't want your mica to be too close to the edge or hanging over the edge. I'm actually going to pull this back just a tiny little bit. Move it up just a little. There, that's better. And that just gives me a little bit of room here since this was catching on the edge. There. Now it should be perfect. This way. So I've inked up my edges a little bit, and what I've done is I've added some of my little photo corners to the bottom so that when I flip this close and seal up my envelope, my little nuthatch will be held in place by those little photo corners. I'm not going to do them at the top because they'll show too much through this edge, and I really just want the back of the bird card to be visible through that. So I'm going to stick this in. I'm going to glue it together and then stick it in. So first, just a little dab of glue here. Like that. And then I can do more glue like this to hold it together. Glued in place. My little corners are there at the bottom. Should be able to slide my nuthatch right in. And then the next thing I want to think about is where my magnet is going to be placed, because I want this to be able to flip open and closed. So I think I might keep it sideways. That's what I'm leaning towards. I'm leaning towards going like this and having it flip open like this. So I think I'm going to put a tiny little hinge on this side. And my little reinforcer at the top. And then add a hole and add my hemp twine to the top. So I want a magnet here on this side. So I'm going to glue that on the inside of the envelope here. And I'm going to put a little piece of paper over the top of it just so that I don't get anything making it sticky on the inside. So I'm just going to take this little piece of paper, since it's handy. I'm going to glue my magnet down to this little piece of paper. And then a tiny bit of glue to the edge of the paper, just to make sure that the paper kind of holds it in place. And do the same thing. And then press down. And that way, my magnet will be stuck there. And then what I can do is put this down and then add the other magnet so that it sticks exactly behind this. So the next step is going to be to make a hinge for this left side. I'm going to take a little scrap of this blue paper. I'm going to score it in the middle. So it's 1 inch wide. Oops, I picked up my magnet. So just a scrap of paper scored in the middle, and then I'm going to cut it to the size that I need it as the hinge on this side. So I'm going to just trim this a little, see if I can get it to the shape of the envelope a little bit. And then it should be perfect. And glue it right on the edge. So this little flap of paper will make a hinge. This is basically the same thing that we did before to make a pocket, except we're just going to do it on one side so that it swings open. Let's take a little bit of glue off with my fingernail. Okay. Okay. The only thing tricky here is just to make sure I've got it straight and to make sure it's in the orientation that I want it to be in. I think that's good. Next, I need to get this magnet inside of my envelope. So to do that, I'm just gonna slide it in and to see where it wants to go. It actually, I don't know if you heard that, but it flipped over as I slid it inside. You can see it inside there. I just slid it over to where it wanted to be, and so that I know what orientation I want the magnet to be in. I'm gonna pull it back out, and I'm basically gonna do the same thing that I did with the other magnet. I'm gonna put glue on this side because I want it to stick to this flap. I'm gonna put a little piece of paper underneath it. A little bit of and then again, I'm going to slide this in. I'm going to hold it up so that it can't stick until it finds the place that it wants to be, where it's right up against the other magnet. I know this probably seems like a really difficult thing, but it's easy. Can you see how it just snapped right into place there? And then I'm just going to press it down, and that'll glue it in exactly the spot that you want it to be at. I learned this trick of using magnets when I learned how to make mini albums, because people who make mini albums use that quite a bit. So then when you turn it over, it flips up, it's invisible, you can't see the magnets, and it flips down and it catches at exactly the right spot. Okay, so add my little reinforcer here and make a hole, and then maybe do a little collaging around the edge just to make the page a little bit more interesting. But it's pretty close to where I want it to be. Okay, so I paused the film and then forgot to turn my camera back on again when I started putting my little reinforcer on, but luckily I checked it and realized my mistake. So I hope you didn't miss too much. One thing that I noticed is that I should have waited to add my grommet until after I glued it down, so that then you'd see the back side of the grommet here. But I didn't. So what I'm going to do is just to add another reinforcer to the other side. Just, I can't do another grommet, but I can do another little piece like that just to make the back look a little bit more interesting. Teeny tiny bit of glue. That just makes it look a little bit nicer on the back. And then I can add my twine. A few of these Tim Holtz Ideology stamps are the perfect color to go with this little nuthatch. I really love, just gonna flip it like this. I think that one is gorgeous. And this one is really beautiful. I'm gonna use these two. This one is spot on, but I think I'm gonna put that one back and use the other two because they give me a little bit more contrast. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of brown to the edges of these. And then the other piece I had thought about using is this piece. I think that'll work. I'm going to try to rip the edges so that it rips a little bit neater. Okay, so now I have this piece. So the reveal is just this little description of the bird that's on the other side. It fits perfectly underneath. So I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to use my stamps and other pieces to just collage over the top. See, having that ripped edge just adds a little bit more interest, especially after you add a little bit of ink to make it show up. Beautiful old paper. With a little bit of a patina on it. One of the last steps in the book is going to be to think about what else I'm going to add to my pockets. And so I might use this little picture on a tag or something that will be stuck into the side pocket. But I'm going to cross that bridge when I come to it. I think for right now, I'm just going to set it aside and know that I'm going to use it for something interesting. So now I've got that glued down. I'm not going to worry too much about losing some of the edge. I'm going to add this stamp here on the lower corner. I think that's beautiful. I'm going to take just the edge off of this stamp so that I can slide it under the other side for balance. Just going to slide this right like this. Make sure, yep, that's perfect. I love these stamps. Love, love, love them. I love the finish of them. I love the way they take ink. I love the colors. So far, all of the colors have gone perfectly with the sort of vintage theme. And then I'm going to add a couple of little blue pieces. Okay, so I've pulled out a couple of blue pieces. I have one for the side, one for the bottom, and this postage stamp. This is from last year's Ideology. So it's smaller scale, and it doesn't have adhesive on the back, but I'm just going to ink it up and it'll look terrific with these other two stamps. And I'm going to cut the edge off so that I can slide it in and collage that there. So I'm going to ink these pieces up and glue them down. That looks so cute. I love it. And I think it's balanced. So the next step is to add some twine at the top. Pull my pieces through the loop. My loop is going to be a little bit too big. So I'm just going to go like this until I have it about the right size. There. That looks pretty good. It's funny how until you add this one last little piece, it doesn't look finished. And then as soon as you add the twine, it looks like, oh yeah, it's a page. Trim the ends. And it's a page. And it's different, but it'll go beautifully with the other pages. I'm very happy with that.